Happy Thursdays, dreamers. So good to see you. Welcome to Chasing Dreams Thursdays, a production of Lisa McLean Publications. And I am Lisa McLean, founder and CEO of Lisa McLean Publications, um, a company that has been designed and developed to help you to self publish, to walk through that entire process from creating your manuscript to hitting go, everything between and everything beyond. So happy to have you here. And as usual, we like to start off with talking about chasing our dreams and making sure that with each passing day, we are taking little steps towards um, moving closer, inching towards those dreams, one step at a time. Hi, Aria. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. We were just getting started talking about any milestones that we've made this week. Hi, Josh. Good to see you as well. Wonderful. So happy to be here. Nice. I hope you guys are having a good week. I hope your Thursday was a little bit more exciting than mine. Mine ended up with a visit to the dentist, which was fun. So I hope your Thursday was way more exciting. Hey, Michael, good to see you. Welcome, welcome. All right, so can we talk about those dreams that we're chasing? I hope each person is making a little step. And I love to share what my little step was, which kind of inspired my session for this evening. I have a children's book that I have put together, that I've written, and needed to reach out and have a conversation about images and use of images, because this one is a little different from other children's books, other picture books that I've created. So discovered a little bit more this week, and that's pretty exciting. Well, Josh, I'm glad that we could keep you company at work. So hoping that that's a good thing. So feel free to make a note in the chat what strides you're making towards pursuing those big, hairy, audacious goals that I hope you're chasing. Tonight, I want to talk about using images in picture books. And in the past, I have used photographs of family and friends, and that was a fairly straightforward process. But in this new work, I would have to be accessing resources from a number of other sources. And I thought it was a good idea to have a conversation about that, because if you are including images and or illustrations that are not your work, you haven't produced them, then you definitely want to make sure that you have covered your bases, because that could get you into a lot of trouble legally. So let's jump in while the information is still fresh on this Thursday evening. So the first one I want to kind of talk about is if you're using images of people. So this is not, and this also includes images of yourself that someone else may have taken. So this is a case where you are either using photographs that someone has taken, or you've brought together your own cast of persons, your own models for what it is that you're creating. You need to ensure that you have their permission in writing to use their images. And if that includes children, then you certainly want the permission of a legal guardian or a parent. And if it's the image of someone who has passed, then you want the legal permission, you want permission from their estate, whoever is entitled to give you that permission, right? You cannot just use someone's image. There's a little bit of leeway, if it's a huge crowd, it's kind of different, and it's somewhat expected that perhaps if you're in that kind of space, and it's just a number of people, and it's a public event, say carnival or a big speech of some sort, But I always like to defer to get legal advice. If you're not sure, get legal advice. But if you have solicited models or if you're using photographs from a photographer who himself would have had to reach out to these individuals, then you really just want something in writing that says you have permission to use this image, which is not that difficult to do. You can actually find what we call an image release form. You can find templates online that you can use. Many photographers probably have one that they use. If you have a friend who's a photographer, ask. Maybe they have one that's pretty easy to understand. And essentially, it needs to outline a couple of things: the name of the person whose image it is, or the name of the photographer, because he would have done his own authorization if this is a part of his stock. So either the name of the person who took the picture or the person whose picture you're taking. And of course, you want to stipulate the use of the image. Is this image being permitted to be used once for one project? Very different if it says once versus for your project. And then, of course, any kind of compensation that's expected. So is it that you paid just for that moment for the image and you're allowed to use it as much as you want and use it for as many books, whatever it is that you're using it for? In this case, if it's the cover of a book or you're using it for a book. Does it cover, is it, okay, you purchased it and you're good, or does it include royalty payments? Like, all of these little things need to be outlined in that document to make sure that you know what your rights are with regards to using that image. I would also want to throw out, this covers illustrations as well. If you solicit illustrations from someone, most professional illustrators would have a contract that you sign at the outset that details this information and the use of those images. So if you're using someone who's new to the field, who's not used to doing illustrations, you want to do your due diligence and ensure that you have a contract in place that allows you to use the images and the terms of use. Okay? Especially when it comes to compensation. Are you paying up front and that's it? Or is there an expectation that they will continue to get royalty payments? And then in addition to that, on that copyright page, you do want to state the source of your images. You do want to attribute the source as well and give credit to whoever was the illustrator or the photographer, right? Whether it's on a copyright page or on the picture itself, you include a caption. So that's kind of standard practice. Even online, and we forget sometimes, especially when we use stock photos, to do that, but it's good to include just some kind of credit for whose work this is. Hello, WW for Kids. Love to have you here, guys. Great organization. You should check them out. They do a lot of wonderful work with promoting literacy with kids. What about words? Meaning quotations? So I'll wait on you to tell me, Michael, if you mean quotations. I'll go on to the next point in the meantime. So we talked about images that have been produced, whether it's photographs or illustrations that were specifically contracted for that job, or something that you see that you like. Make sure that you have what we call an authorization contract to use them, and the terms are detailed. I want to go into the second one because this actually affects my particular project that I'm currently working on. And it came up with a book that I did some editing and revising work for a family friend. When you're using images that are they're not the public domain, but when they're in the possession of a museum or a national library, because these could be images of a public figure, a historical figure of some sort. Again, there's some of these images that it seems to be that it's okay for you to use generally. So things like maps, images of historical buildings that you may have taken yourself. But once you're tapping into a database that's owned by an institution, then you do want to reach out to them for permission to use that image. So for example, in my particular case, I'm looking for images of public officials and historical buildings that I may have seen on the local National Library of Jamaica site. So I reached out to them, and they have their own form that you fill in and you indicate which images you want. And their main stipulation is that you give credit to where the image was sourced. This would be the case for many museums. You should be able to reach out to them. Some of them would actually allow you to use those images for free, because based on the length of time since they've been produced, they would have fallen within the public domain. And so, paintings from, say, the 1500s, I think there is a time frame of about, 70 years, and something kind of shifts into the public domain and allows you to access it. But again, I would say check the disclaimers on the websites, reach out to someone in those organizations, or consult an attorney just to make sure you're covered. But many of these organizations will state, if you're going to pull something from their database, please give credit. There is a form that they normally need you to fill out, or they'll say very plainly and clearly, public domain usage, you can use these and have them reproduced. Now, very often there's a difference between using it on a blog, right? So that kind of one time, or an article that you're writing, versus using it commercially. And it's when you get into that commercial space that you definitely want to ensure that you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's and you've gotten everything in writing. Because that's when it becomes an issue with the use of these images, even if they're in the public domain. Sometimes there's that little bit of fine print, so double check. Hi, Deroni, thanks for joining, good to have you. We're talking about images and using images and illustrations in your published work, and just being cautious and doing your due diligence. Michael talked about words. There is a criteria to citing other people's work in your books. Depending on which format you're using, which, when I say format, meaning MLA, I forget the other type that's there. There are criteria regarding how much you can quote without actually necessarily having permission, but making sure that you do cite your sources. And once you go beyond that, then you do need to reach out to the publisher of that text and get written permission if you're doing longer extracts. But certainly if you look up MLA formatting, it would give you those guidelines. And again, if you're shifting into a commercial space, then you definitely want to do a little bit more research on that. I will double check and get back to you on that just to make sure. Because most of my familiarity with quotations has to do with the academic space, where, once you quote maybe a paragraph, you're good, but if you're getting into more text, you need permission. And I would imagine that it's a little bit more specific for the commercial space. So I'll definitely look and dig a little deeper for you and get back to you on that. Good question. So we talked about images of people, and we talked about images that are part of a database. And the last one that I actually want to just kind of touch on briefly, stock images. So if you're going through, so I actually have two more. I normally have three. I actually have a list of four. If you're using stock photos, if you're going through an online program or an online site like Pixabay, Shutterstock, they are really good with indicating whether the image can be used commercially, the terms of the image. They would have already done their due diligence, and when they're collecting their stock, they would have had image releases already signed by those photographers. So essentially, by paying them a subscription price, so like a Shutterstock normally has some kind of a subscription rate to access those images, or you pay per image, or a website like Pixabay may have some that are free, right? Once you click on the image, before you can download it, they will indicate whether this is an image that can be used commercially whether you can access that image for free or whether it has to be paid for before you can access it. And if it's being used commercially, it will indicate the terms. I've done that for one of my books before, and the terms were really simple. So this is why you want to check and make sure you do your due diligence, because sometimes it's as little as citing the name of the photographer or the illustrator. That might be the only terms that some of these websites require, and you just need to list that on your copyright page. And so you don't want to get yourself into trouble over something that simple, because they can, I mean, the more serious end of it is that you could end up in a lawsuit, but it could be as simple as you've uploaded your manuscript on a site like KDP or Ingram Spark, and you're getting ready, you've done your marketing, you're 2 days away from launching, and if a query comes up over the content and the images and they have not been cited, or there's some concern over the sourcing, you don't want to have to be pulled 2 days before launching, right? Because that can happen as well. And that's a huge inconvenience, especially if you have spent a lot of money on your marketing plan and you have an established launch and you've prepared, right? So be careful. Hi, Sanjay. Thank you for joining. Good to see you. Happy Thursday. And my last point, and I've kind of touched on this in the first one, so I'm actually not even going to spend a lot of time on it. And, when I mentioned the first one, I was talking about images of people with regards to photographs, but I also kind of threw in there, by the way, if you are soliciting the help of an illustrator. And I mentioned it, and I'll repeat it again, because illustrators are artists in their own right. They are creatives. And when you use their creation, you want to ensure that you have something in writing, because on the cover of your book, it's not just going to say written by, it's going to say illustrated by. And you want to ensure before you start, not when you're finished. Because when you're finished, if you guys don't agree on the terms, you've spent that money, you're going to have to pay for those images. And if you don't agree with the terms, you're going to have to start over. You could be looking at $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, depending on the length of your book and if it's a children's picture book, right? So from the outset, please have in writing the terms under which you are allowed to use those images. And in particular, whether there is an expectation that having paid for these images, you're done, finished, that's the end of your agreement, or if there's an expectation for royalty payments once the book is published and continues to be available in the marketplace. All right, so check these things out. Again, there are a lot of free forms online that you can use and tweak. But anything of that nature, you certainly want to have an attorney take a look at it before you use it, just to make sure it covers as much detail as possible, and also to make sure that it covers the jurisdiction that you belong in, all right, or the jurisdiction of that creative, or the jurisdiction where you are publishing, right? Because again, this could be a little thing like you cannot publish that book, having worked on it. Not a little thing, but on a range, I say it's little. You may be delayed in publishing until you've sorted these issues out, or you may have to start over. Or on the other extreme, you could get caught in a lawsuit, all right? And that becomes more of an issue, especially when you're going to get into writing memoirs, not autobiographies, but biographies of other people. If you are creating any kind of work that may be biographical in nature, say it may refer to actual events, and you're using images of persons that are friends or family, and you don't want to make the assumption that that's okay. So doesn't matter who you're using, what you need, get legal advice. And I'll just kind of recap. And if you came in late, I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you want to just, once we're done, the video is recorded and uploaded and you can go through it. But just to recap, whenever you're using any kind of images in your publications, you want to ensure that you have permission in writing for those images. You want to ensure that this is even more so if you are producing a piece of work for commercial use. You're going to be paid, whether it's a book that's going to be, you're using it for an advertisement, a billboard, anything that's going to end up in a paid kind of commercial space. We talked about images of people and making sure that you have authorized release from them or their legal guardians. We talked about accessing files from databases like libraries and museums. Many of them are going to have forms that they're going to need you to find if you're using that work commercially. We talked about illustrators, making sure you have contracts where that are concerned. Those are concerned. And certainly if you're using stock images, keep in mind they're not all free for use if you're using it in a commercial space. Some you may have to pay for, or you may have to pay for a subscription to the site. Some are free, but may just need you to cite your sources. At the end of the day, make sure you're covered, do your due diligence. Anything you're not sure of, ask an attorney. And you should be good to go. Hello, Fanso74, thank you for joining. Not sure if you have any questions for me in this regard. I know there was a question about quotations, so I'll check on that for sure. Anybody has any specific experiences using images and illustrations that they want to refer to, or any additional questions, anything that you'd want me to look at any further before we sign off for tonight? So happy to see so many new faces tonight. This is exciting. Welcome, welcome. This is a self-publishing community. We talk about books and really important bits of information to consider if you are looking at self-publishing. Definitely check out our website, IamLisaMcLean.com, to see the range of support services that we offer to authors, whether you're new to the world of publishing or continuing on your path and just looking for a different approach to take. All right. Okay, so no questions. All right. Well, I was happy to have you on tonight. Definitely looking forward to seeing you again next week. We are in the second week of our Vineyard community. I have to share that. Our 6-week community where we're writing a sentence a day. And we jam once a week on Sundays to share our favorite, most impactful sentence that we came up with for the week. Free to join if you haven't signed up yet. It's not free, it is a subscription. It's $20 for the 6 weeks, but you're still welcome to join is what I meant by that, because we've only just wrapped up week 2. So definitely sign up if you want to be a part of that and join our jamming sessions. Good to see you tonight. I'd love to wish you all a happy weekend. Looking forward to seeing you again next Thursday when we will talk more about publishing and books and all kinds of exciting things that we're doing. Take care.